Hello there, my name is John Shepherd. I'm a client content partner at Hemsley Fraser, and I am here with Malcolm Carter, who is Vice President for the US team of Solutions Delivery and Solution Architecture. I'm with Dawn Smart, who is a learning consultant, and Eleanor Hudgell, who is design consultant, all for Hemsley Fraser. So, welcome all. We're going to be talking today about Agile leadership. And Eleanor, if I could come to you first, just to give us an overview of why you think organisations need Agile leaders.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. So quite simply, organisations have changed a great deal in the last few decades, and how we traditionally saw organisations in the 20th century, where organisations were just seen as kind of a big machine that just kind of operated according to fairly predictable systems and processes and procedures and patterns. That's no longer the case. And I think we can probably all see that from our own experiences in the 21st century, that an organisation now is more like a living kind of organism, and we need to treat it as such. So organisations now need to be agile, they need to be flexible, they need to adapt to changing circumstances, they need to be able to respond dynamically to changing conditions and just to kind of think on their feet as an organisation. So we need leaders that can do the same. So I think that to be a successful leader now in the 21st century is very different to how it used to be. And so we need to develop a new mindset and a new set of skills that will allow us as leaders to lead organisations through these kind of uncertain and unpredictable times that we live in.
Eleanor, can I just stay with you just to explain to us all what you understand Agile leadership to be and how you think it differs from those more traditional forms of leadership that you mentioned?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it's a completely different mindset to leadership. I think in the past, the leader has been kind of like the hero of the organisation or of the team. You know, the one that kind of steps in and rescues when things go wrong and has kind of full control and direction of everything and kind of issues instruction, that kind of command and control approach to leadership. And that's been evolving, of course, over a number of years. But I think, you know, where we are now and reflecting how organisations are different and the circumstances in which organisations operate are so different, that it is a different mindset and a different approach. And some of the skills that we've been using and practicing for years, we can still use those as part of the Agile leadership kind of toolkit, but it's having a different mindset behind it. So it's being prepared to let go of control a little bit. You know, it's taking that more kind of coaching approach where you're empowering people to think and act for themselves rather than following your instructions. It's not kind of relying on, your tried and tested ways of operating. This is how we've done it in the past. This is how it's going to work in the future. I think to be really agile, you have to let go of all of that and be prepared to sort of live more in the present. So, making decisions based on what you can see around you right now, rather than what you did last year or even yesterday, because that probably won't work anymore. So it's really recognising that, the world is a different place, organisations are different beings, and so therefore as leaders we need to evolve and adapt as well.
Great, thanks, Eleanor. Dawn, could I come to you? You got anything to add to that?
I was just going to pick up on what Eleanor said there about, not being able to operate in the same way as yesterday, because it won't work today. But I also think there's something about not being able to over-plan for tomorrow as well, because actually part of that Agile leadership is not having all the information you need, not knowing definites around everything. So it's changing from what we did yesterday, but also being able to adapt to what we don't know the future might be yet.
Mal, something to add?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we're in a global world today, and no matter how small our business is or how large our businesses are, we are going to operate and we're going to touch people that are global. And being able to work very fast with people, different time zones, different types of people, different cultures in business, then we need to make sure we're able to operate very fast and figure out a way to go forward. And then if it doesn't work, being okay with pivoting into a slightly different direction so you can still remain agile. So I think just understanding the whole idea that we live in a world where there's so many different types of people, so many different types of culture, even within one organization, like Hemsley Fraser, where we're in different countries, throughout the world. We have to be able to work in a very agile mindset. And when it's not working appropriately, everyone's okay with pivoting and still remaining agile.
Yeah. And I think that's, again, it's a mindset shift for a lot of leaders, isn't it? To be prepared to say, do you know what, I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I don't have the answers. We can't plan anymore in the same way that we used to. Obviously, I'm not saying don't make plans at all. You've got to think about the future, but you've got to approach that with the mindset of like, it could change at any moment. We don't know, we can't predict. We have to evolve, we have to keep moving, we have to be prepared to adapt day by day based on what's actually happening rather than what we predicted was going to happen or what we planned to do. So we need to get comfortable with just saying, actually, forget all that stuff that we intended to do, because that's no longer relevant, that's all out the window, and we're just going to do something different. So it's kind of being comfortable with saying, I don't know, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I think it's about being comfortable with that idea of change, isn't it? Because I think, we talk about change. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people can adapt to it, some people can't. It's just becoming the need to adapt, to be able to adapt to change isn't an optional anymore, I don't think, is it? In this world, it's absolutely vital that we can all do it. So I think as an agile leader, you need to be able to lead by example and flex and adapt to change, but also at the same time create an environment where the people in your teams and the people working around you can adapt to that change, because it is going to be, it's a cliche, isn't it, but it's going to be there and it's just going to get quicker and faster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we need to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, don't we? We know that if you're not feeling uncomfortable, you're probably not learning, and if you're not feeling a little bit scared, a little bit vulnerable, you're probably not growing. So to kind of accept that that's just the norm and that's okay, and actually it's better to feel that discomfort and vulnerability, because that means you probably are learning and growing rather than just doing the same stuff that you've always done. So you just need to be just being prepared for that and being comfortable with that. And as Dawn says, from a leadership point of view, is then empowering everybody else to be comfortable with that as well, and accept that that's just part of the way that we need to work.
I think that's a really interesting point, because it's great. It's relatively straightforward for us as individuals, as leaders, to say I'm going to have an agile mindset. But are the things that we can do then to encourage it in our team, or is it just demonstrating best practice and allowing people to be agile in their opinions, thoughts, and all that sort of thing? Mal?
Yeah, I think that we have to have this as part of our culture. As we embrace change, as both ladies eloquently describe, it really allows us to be able to become much more agile at a much faster rate. And organizations that aren't able to adapt, they're not going to have success in business. Because the world is very open, the internet's there, people can see very easily what organizations are doing. People know the innovation that's occurring, how organizations are becoming more competitive these days. And agile leadership really, in terms of you're agile, it makes you become much more competitive, and it makes you become much more innovative. And if you're able to start thinking outside the box, allowing for disruption to occur in your organization, then you can actually move forward. And it only happens if you have an agile culture that takes place to remain competitive and surpass.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree, Malcolm. And in terms of, what we can do as leaders on a sort of day-to-day basis, I think there are some really specific actions, aren't there, that we can take to sort of develop that culture. So, listening to people more, empowering people to make their own decisions rather than just kind of following instructions, delegating responsibility, encouraging accountability, creating that kind of safe space with psychological safety where people can speak up and give their opinions. So back to Malcolm's point as well about, the sort of diverse cultures that we work in and being inclusive and allowing everyone to, to disagree with each other and to disagree with you, and not assuming that you have all the answers, but, allow other people to take the lead and to, give their own answers and perspectives and ideas as well. So it's kind of devolving power and control to teams rather than retaining it within the sort of the leadership spectrum.
Yeah, which I guess comes back to what you started off talking about, Eleanor, with the fact it's not it's not the same as the historical model of leadership. It's a completely different model, really.
Exactly right, yeah. So it's about empowering people, it's about engaging people, it's about inspiring people so that they can operate independently of you as the leader, which is quite a tough thing sometimes for leaders to accept, isn't it? And to kind of give that control back to the teams and the individuals that you work with. So at the same time, as a leader, you need to make sure those people are being developed and they're learning and they're developing the skills and the confidence that they need to be able to take that responsibility on.
What Eleanor was saying there just made me think actually that I think as leaders, you've got to be really conscious not to be the bottleneck. So you were talking about devolving sort of power and empowering people, giving them autonomy, etc. Because if everything has to come through you as the leader, then you can really be slowing everything down. So I think it's really important that we're conscious not to be that bottleneck and to not be the obstacle that's in the way of being agile.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the opposite to agile, isn't it? If everything has to be funneled through you as the leader, then you're not able to be dynamic and be able to pivot like we talked about before. So yeah, absolutely. It's creating kind of, networks of, engaged, inspired, autonomous, responsible, committed and motivated teams who, as I say, can operate independently of leadership, really. And then you're there to reinforce the culture, to drive the learning, the development, the purpose and direction, because you need obviously something to hang all of this on. It's not just people just all wandering off and doing their own thing. There needs to be a clear kind of a guiding principle and a purpose and a sort of a vision that everyone understands and is bought into, so that when they make decisions, they're doing that with that vision, aligning to what it is that you're trying to achieve as an organisation.
We've covered sort of what it is, why it's important, and obviously we've been very clear it is very important, both from a business need, but I guess also from a people need. But if there's a lot to it, Eleanor, and if I was listening to this, have you got any tips as to how I can actually start this process? Because there's an awful lot involved. What would be a good starting point sort of to get everything moving?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot to it, isn't there, really? So it's the mindset piece, which is what we've been talking about, getting comfortable with change, being prepared to, kind of relinquish control a little bit and give people more autonomy. So it's partly kind of just shifting that mindset and almost seeing yourself as a leader in a different light. So I'm not the hero, I'm not the boss as such, I'm more of an enabler and more of a kind of an instrument of achievement, rather than someone who issues instructions and controls everything. So it's partly that. But then there are certain skills, I think. So coaching is a great skill. So, stepping back and letting people come up with their own solutions, but providing the guidance to do that. Listening, asking questions, involving people, asking people what they think and really listening to what they say. And, taking all of those ideas on board and, being really attuned to the environment. So whether that's the team environment, the market, the business environment. So know what's going on, be aware of that and be prepared to kind of make your decisions based on that. So it's kind of, staying in touch, living in the present moment rather than relying on what you've done in the past or trying to plan too much for the future.
Mal, something to add to that?
Yeah, I just think that, Hemsley Fraser does a very good job in working with organizations to encourage pieces that it may be direct in terms of agile, leadership. It also may be pieces that surround it to ensure that we are working with our organizations, our partners, to become more agile. And I think it's key to look at it as a very direct piece, but also looking at, the exterior and things that we may not say agile, but really are agile, where we are able to kind of move in a way that we move quickly, are able to change, adapt, leadership top down, to encourage that this is part of who we are or that organization is.
Thanks, Mal. Excellent. Thank you all three. That's really interesting. We're going to go and talk on in other podcasts about compassionate leadership and unconscious bias, and I guess all three will interweave. But thank you very much for your time. That's really interesting starting point for this series of podcasts. Thank you.